Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome to the Christopher Marc Show. So today I have the privilege of being in front of an amazing person. I mean, like her story is amazing. It's literally like night and day. Um, Victoria, can you tell everybody your full name and what do you do?
Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Victoria Cvitanovic, and I am a cannabis and psychedelic medicine lawyer.
Got you. So, what got you into being that? Like going, you know what I mean? Because me and you talked, and it's like I want people to really know like the full scope of like how did you go from what you did before to now?
Sure. So I went to law school in Louisiana, and I married someone who's from New Orleans. We got married really shortly after law school and moved to New Orleans together, and I was hired on at the Orleans Parish DA's office. I worked as a narcotics prosecutor primarily in the beginning, and later in my career, I worked in violent crime prosecution as well as juvenile prosecution. So I kind of spanned the realm of criminal law with this focus constantly on narcotics and how the movement of narcotics, specifically trafficking, was affecting our communities. When I went through this process of being a prosecutor, I left pretty disheartened about how drug policy in America works, especially how it works in hand with sentencing and how it works in hand with trauma treatment and the resources people aren't able to access after they've been prosecuted. So I left that and then I went into healthcare law.
So, can you break down a little bit about like what healthcare law is? How is that different from?
Sure. So I left public service and I started working first for the state and then for a private law firm, defending doctors. And my goal here was I want to learn why I'm seeing so many people who should be patients becoming people who are prosecuted as criminals for activities on the illicit market. Like, what is making these people in a first world country that should be providing really excellent healthcare turn to the illicit market for support and for what they need? So I started working defending doctors on the medical malpractice side. And then my practice grew into physician contracts, how healthcare systems are built, how insurance companies interact with doctors. And then as that process was happening, as I was kind of widening my scope into healthcare, I broke my back. And when that accident happened, I was left in chronic pain and trying to figure out what was going to be next for me. I knew I still wanted to work in healthcare. I felt really passionate about what we were doing on the medical side, but I was suffering. I was in pain constantly. I was struggling to walk. It was the beginning of the pandemic. Times were really hard on all of us, and it was a hard time to make that adjustment. And one of my doctor clients came to me and she said, "You're a perfect candidate for psychedelic assisted therapy. Specifically, you're a perfect candidate for ketamine assisted therapy."
Mm.
And I laughed at her. I said, "Absolutely not. You're kidding. Like, I'm this very law enforcement involved person. I'm really supportive of my fellow DAs. I am a practicing Zen Buddhist who's focused on mindfulness and living a really focused on the present moment and compassionate life. It scares me to take quote unquote drugs." For anyone who's listening to this, I'm doing air quotes right now, to try and relieve my pain and feel better. But this doctor didn't give up on me. She actually went to my priest and she told him, "You've got to talk to her. She's suffering and she doesn't have to." And my priest came to me and he asked me a question that changed the course of my entire life, my career, my thought process, my relationships with other people. And what he said was this: "Is psychedelic therapy for connection or for escapism?" And when he said that, it all clicked. These people in my life were coming to me and trying to help me. They weren't trying to help me get high and run away from my problems.
Mm-hmm.
They missed me. They wanted me back. They saw that I was carrying too much and I needed to put some of it down. And they wanted me back in that community. And when I saw that, it all made sense to me. Why these people were advocating for legalization, why these people were advocating for decrim, why these people were advocating for medical programs. They wanted their people back. They wanted their community back. I went in for my first session and I was scared to death. Never done anything like this. And it worked immediately for me. The pain relief and just the patience for living in pain. Anyone out there who has chronic pain knows that a characteristic of pain is that it's impatient. Pain makes you pay attention to it right now.
Yeah.
And developing some space for that was immediate for me. And I remember grabbing my provider's hands and saying, "You have to let me look at your insurance. This can't go away." And sure enough, when I started looking at the way that this practice was set up, I saw some major vulnerabilities in the way that this could be attacked by a medical board or by a patient lawsuit. The way that her insurance was structured needed to be changed to be more protective of her. Then we started looking at her contracts and similar things started coming up. And so we worked together to take this ketamine clinic and make it as safe to operate and as sustainable to operate as possible. From there, the practice grew. I started working with a lot of ketamine-assisted therapy clinics, and then when psilocybin started, I started to do that work. But a lot of the doctors were also practicing in medical cannabis. And that wasn't something I knew anything about, so I started learning. And I found that medical cannabis and where it intersects with the adult recreational market is a very complicated place legally. And providers need really educated healthcare attorneys as well as really educated commercial transactional attorneys to navigate it properly. So I threw myself into this. And now years later, I'm working with Rudick Law Group, which is an all-woman plant medicine focused law firm that really works on these highly regulated, complex areas of law like cannabis and psychedelics.
Right.
And we help people build sustainable, protected, and safe businesses to operate.
Wow. So, I mean, that's a huge, transition. Like to jump from, hey, this is what I'm doing over here on this side of the law, and then now it's like, you know what, I'm in this space in my life, and now I can see the value of, holistic medicine and incorporating that into my day-to-day life, and like, okay, how can I help other people to save their practices as well? So that's pretty cool. I think that's, because I've worked with I have a few people that's actually a part of our community, and they are doing psychedelics and holistic healing and things like that. And so the reason why we actually had this this cool interview here is because people need that support.
They really do.
They don't know.
No, the rules are complicated.
Yeah.
And they're spread across a large area of the total body of law. I remember when I started talking to people about their websites being ADA compliant and their digital content being ADA compliant. And they're like, what are you talking about? What does that mean? And I remember talking to people about, hey, a lot of the times this kind of medicine isn't HIPAA regulated. How are you going to protect people's data? And people were shocked that you really need a lot of good cybersecurity practices, really good contracts, really strongly built insurance programs that are interconnected with your daily operations if you're going to make this sustainable. We want everybody to be able to have the business that they want. And how you choose to run your business is a huge part of the benefit of being an entrepreneur. That's awesome. But I see a lot of businesses where one well-pleaded lawsuit could take them out. They would not be able to afford to operate anymore. And that entire community and all those patients lose their support when that happens. So we come in and we recommend what is it that you need to do so that you are not as vulnerable in this marketplace.
So how did you, I'm sure your friends or your family, how did they feel once you were like, hey, this is what I'm going to do now for a career?
So it's been an interesting transition. When I first left state service and I started doing this, I was working for a really large law firm, like thousands of lawyers law firm.
Mm,
And so this wasn't 100% of my work. It was a growing part of my work. So I started talking about it more kind of gradually.
mm,
And my family really saw how this changed my life. The effect, like I said, was so immediate for someone who's been in pain every day for the past 5 years, like myself. Having this kind of tool is transformative. My mom said that she saw me smile again for the first time since my accident. And so I think people were excited for me when they heard me talking about it more and heard me being excited and passionate and happy after such a devastating accident. Then, when I took the leap and said, hey, mom and dad, I am quitting my very secure, large law firm to join this group of women who believe that they can change the world
yeah.
and who believe that we can take care of people in this industry. I was expecting some hesitation. I was expecting some like, you have a really secure job. Why would you do this? But instead, what I got is, oh my God, I'm so glad.
Mm,
There needs to be people, especially people with disabilities like myself now, talking about, especially with a Southern accent, how this has affected your life in a positive way. My whole family is from this very rural area in the South where there's not a lot of conversation about this. And people live sick and in pain because of societal prejudices that we haven't had a chance to unpack. We have effective medications, people just can't access them. And so my family saw this as like, you're continuing the legacy of all the help you got. You're giving back to your community and to the universe what it is that you were so lucky to have yourself. Not a lot of people get access to psychedelic assisted therapy in New Orleans, Louisiana. Even less where I'm from, in Dyersburg, Tennessee. That is not a reality for so many people who are suffering. And my parents were like, great, let's go. My husband was like, great, let's go. I want to see the world change in this way. And I believe that you and this group of women can be a part of that.
Being able to make that, first of all, I admire you. Like,
Thank
seriously,
you.
everything that you do, because it's, to go from, hey, this is what's going on with me, and someone trying to introduce to you another perspective of that could help heal you, help you have a better life, and then say, hey, I'm going to fight for this cause. Like, stand up for it, you know what I mean? Like, I think, it reminds me of, like, for me, the reason why I started, like, my community podcast, all this other stuff is like, I was always around artists, always around people who were starting businesses and trying to get things started, and they didn't have like the support. And even though there's a lot of resources out there, there isn't someone there to essentially guide you from point A to point B and onward, so that you can, get where you need to go, have the right resources, things like that. It didn't exist. And so for me, and I looked at it, I'm like, I even travel. I went to like London and Amsterdam, and people were like, we need this. And I'm just like, okay. I'm like, how can I make this where it's available everywhere? And so I think that when you're fighting for a cause and you see that people need it, and you see that the value of what you offer, it's amazing, because now it lets you know, like, you're not just existing, like, you're alive now. And that's a huge thing. That's a huge difference for a lot of people. They don't see the difference in that. They're like, oh, I'm just, I got something secure.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're living a life where it's like you have a mission.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those people that believes everybody has to make their passion their job. That's not right for everyone.
Right.
But for me, this treatment, medical cannabis as well as medical psychedelics, exists because of disability advocacy. There have been lots of different communities that have advocated for this, but ultimately what has persuaded legislators and rule makers in our very, specific society is that this can help people who need medical treatment. And so, like we've seen with cannabis, where medicalization is ultimately what led to liberalization, I think we're starting to see that with psychedelics as well. And so, as a disabled person, I will freely admit that before I became disabled, I did not realize the disability community is the only community all of us can join in an instant.
Yeah.
Every single one of us lives in this fragile human body, and to be human is to be breakable. We all have this in common. And so when I joined this community and I saw just how many people were willing to say, like, hey, you can be in pain every single day and still live an amazing life. Your life is still worth living. You've still got so much to give, even though it didn't turn out the way that you expected. That for me was something I could never leave behind. I looked at all of the disabled people who came before me and fought for better lives, not just for themselves, but for all of society. And said, like, this is my goal now. This is my mission now. I will never be able to look at the world the same way after my accident. And I hope that the next person that has that accident has somebody fighting for their rights in front of them, the same way that I had somebody fighting for my rights and my medical access in front of me.
Man, you know, it's like hearing this is like, I'm a huge advocate for anything holistic, especially if it's going to help allow people to have a better life. Because, you know, like I used to work in a hospital for like 11 years, and so I would see like people who were just sick and had cancer and had this and that, and so like you start to look at it as like, okay, well, there has to be a better way, a way where it can, you know, be more holistic, less pressure, less, you know, where it's like people are struggling financially, and there's an actual support there. And so, you know, man, this is exciting. I remember when me and you first talked, and you were just like, you were watching my interviews, and I'm thinking to myself, and you were like, oh, I hope they're, you know, all these people you interviewed are pretty cool. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, do you know what you're doing?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like,
lawyers are not known for being cool.
You're doing awesome work, man. Like, you're like, oh my God. Like, so let me ask you this, like, on a spiritual level, how has this, you know, this journey, has it affected you in any way, positive, negatively?
It's been really profound. I grew up in my parents' religion. My parents are very, very Christian in that very prototypically American Southern way. And they find a lot of meaning in that. It's really beautiful. But I was always struggling with feeling disconnected from that. I'm bisexual, and a lot of what I saw was not supportive of the queer community. I had a lot of questions that I felt like I wasn't getting answers to. And so for a large period of my life, I felt like I was deconstructing what I had been told to believe and trying to figure out what was right for me. I found Buddhism through my neighborhood. Literally, there was a temple in my neighborhood in New Orleans, and some of my neighbors went. And when I started going and started that spiritual path, I found what I had been looking for. This was what I needed to understand my own connection to the universe, to divinity, and to other people. And that was great. But I think, like a lot of people, when I started exploring my faith, I was really black and white and prescriptive about it. You know, I read the precepts, I read the rules, and thought, like, check, 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 check. Now I'm a good person. And I had to start deconstructing that idea, right? The phrase that's used a lot in English Buddhism or English speaking Buddhism is these are guideposts. They're not commandments. So you need to be thinking through how these are playing out in your life instead of just trying to be as strict as possible. And so before I ever did psychedelic assisted therapy and was talking to my priest about it, it already had this massive effect on me spiritually, because it helped me see that everything that I do has to be interpreted through the lens of compassion. It's not compassionate to follow rules. It's compassionate to use those kinds of guideposts to guide compassion in your actual life. So there's one of the precepts about intoxicants where it says that you're not supposed to use or sell intoxicants in a way that pulls people away from their mindfulness practice, that pulls people away from their spiritual path. And so I first thought that meant no psychedelics, that psychedelic assisted therapy was going to pull me away from my spiritual path. As I was preparing for psychedelic assisted therapy, my community, my Buddhist community, was incredibly supportive. And they said, your pain is pulling you away from your spiritual path. Your pain is clouding everything that you're doing right now. Have you ever been this angry in your life? And they were very much right. I was intoxicated by pain. And I think a lot of us, by physical, spiritual pain, we're intoxicated by pain. And so this gave me more clarity, more mindfulness. It gave me the ability to be patient with my pain. This pain that was not patient with me at all. I was able to sit with it and go, you're here and we're in this together. We're going to have this life. We're going to share this body. This is our journey now. And it's my responsibility to take care of you just as much as it's my responsibility to take care of the rest of myself. Psychedelics gave me that awareness, and that awareness transformed everything about my relationship to divinity, spirituality, and ultimately the holiness that is other people. The community in and of itself is divine, and being able to see that changed everything for me.
You know, it's official. This is a cool interview. Just so you know, I just wanted to let you know that. It's official, okay? I'll just let you know. I'll throw it out there. Okay. No, that's, I mean, like, I think that's the thing. Like, most people, they're trying to find where they can communicate their spirit the most.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think a lot of times people ask themselves all the time, like, you know, is this faith for me, or is this religion for me, or this, you know, what works for me? And a lot of times it's more about your experiences, and your experiences shape, you know, the way you need to approach life, because life is universal and it's all about the perspectives based upon your experiences. So it's like, no one can say to you, you know, oh, this is you should went this way and this is going to work for you. And I tell people all the time, I say, go with what gives you peace. Like, go with what gives you peace. Go with what will allow for you to be the best version of yourself. Because it's not about, you know, you just saying, oh, this is what I do, this is my faith, this is my religion. It's more about you becoming a better version of you. Mm-hmm. And if it helps you become a better version of you, then that's amazing, because then now other people can benefit from that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot about this conversation I actually had yesterday. I was flying yesterday from New York to Houston, and I was sitting next to a priest on the flight. And we got into a conversation about religion and a conversation about how we kind of see the world, divinity, community, all of those things. And one of the things that he said to me that I thought was so incredible was that ultimately, when we look at each other, the only way that we're going to reduce our suffering as people, as beings, is if we look at each other and we see the face of God. And I thought that that was just truly remarkable. He wasn't saying that, you know, we're all gods or we're all in charge of everything or something crazy like that. What he was saying was you have to treat everyone the way that you treat what it is that you hold most holy.
Mm-hmm.
He asked me, you know, I have a hard time seeing how a lawyer could like zealously negotiate a contract on my behalf and then also be this, you know, peace practicing Buddhist. And I laughed at that because to me, the two are so intertwined. You do not want someone negotiating on your behalf who can't see the other side, who can't be empathetic to why it is that the person who's presented you this deal or this litigation is doing what they're doing. You can't be strategic if you're not kind. You can't be strategic if you're not open to understanding and seeing through somebody else's eyes. The realization that we as humans are so incredibly limited, we can only ever see things from our own perspective, no matter how much we try, is fundamental to being a good lawyer. Acknowledging your limits, asking questions to help you better understand that other perspective. All of the things I've learned from Buddhism, from psychedelic assisted therapy, and from the incredibly cool people that I'm surrounded by come into play and make me a better lawyer. It's not about being like I'm on Suits and being the meanest, wittiest, fastest on my feet person in the room.
Yeah.
It's about being the most understanding, the most in-depth, and the most, for lack of a better word, universal person in the room. That's what makes me a good lawyer. It's not separate from it. It's part of it.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing about it. People don't understand that. They don't understand that, who you are as a person is really it determines how good you are at your job, right? Like for me, it's like if I'm working with a client and I'm guiding him through anything subconsciously, spiritually, whatever it may be, it's like you have to also be able to say, okay, let me have this empathy for them, this compassion, to understand where they're coming from, to understand that, even though you haven't experienced their experience, what we, like the pain that you feel, the pain is universal, right? And so we just identify it. It's just levels of it. But, when you identify it, people connect to it. And then they connect to you, and then they realize that, okay, you get it. Like, yes. You're not just like trying to sell me something. You get it. You get that type of pain. Even if you haven't had experience what I experienced, you understand the pain I've been through.
Yes. You remind me so much of what comes up when people ask me, how do you hire a lawyer? Like, how do you pick which lawyer you're going to hire? Obviously, as somebody in my mid-30s, I know a lot of people who have gotten divorced. Right. And so a lot of my friends have come to me and said, how do you decide which divorce attorney you're going to hire? And, you go through the basics. You want to make sure you have somebody educated and licensed who does enough of this. But there's a personality element of this too, right? Because when you're selecting someone to represent you, whether that's in your divorce, in a transaction, whatever, the way that they carry themselves and the way that they behave is going to affect how people perceive you. That's not just the judge, that's not just your spouse, but it is everyone who's involved in this situation is going to watch the way that that lawyer behaves, and they're going to take that on as something you have been okay with and you have promulgated. So with divorces, we talk a lot about like, what kind of co-parenting relationship do you want to have afterwards? Or what kind of friendship or relationship do you want to have afterwards? And how can the attorney you choose further that? Do you want someone who never talks to you again? Great, then hire the meanest, angriest person in the room. Do you have somebody on the other side who might be really combative and make you feel unsafe? Hire a protector. But if you want that kinder, more compassionate relationship later, especially if you think you might need it, and this is a hard time in the relationship, but ultimately you think things are going to smooth out, you need to hire someone who has that goal as well, and who in those hard moments finds connection rather than elevating this to a new level of conflict. And so whenever we talk about the professionals we work with, I really encourage people to connect to exactly what you just said. We have to find that person for whom, even though we've never been through the same thing, even though we have a really different life, even though we do totally different things for money in capitalism, that person understands me because we have found something universal in our relationship.
Yeah, and that's a powerful thing because, I can guarantee you that's probably why people want to work with you, because it's like they get that you understand. And even if, again, the experiences are always different, but just the fact that you're willing to say, what happened? I'm just going to listen. Like those simple things, like they're not complicated, but it lets people know that you've been there. you've been at that space where no one heard you. You've been at that space where no one asked what happened. And so because you were at that space, you can now identify, because we're always meeting ourselves over and over again, just
Yes, we
versions
are.
of ourselves. And so when we connect with people, we might connect with, I always tell people, you're either going to meet a representation of your past, your present, or your future. And sometimes you're dealing with those people in your life simultaneously, and so you have to be willing to ask yourself, how would I treat me?
Mm-hmm. The greatest lie I think humans have ever been told, this is a rant of mine, the greatest lie we've ever been told is that there's a such thing as other people.
Yeah.
We are literally all in this together on a rock spinning through space, walking each other home.
Yeah.
We are all here in this brief temporary moment, affected by everything anybody does. Separateness, the lack of interdependence, whatever you want to call it, is a delusion. And so ultimately, when we find ourselves doing things like practicing law to help these businesses, or interviewing someone to talk about what a business owner might want to do in this space, or what a patient might be looking for in this space, however we find ourselves, we're all doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We are taking a step forward day by day to ultimately where we are all going. And that is terrifying and powerful in a way that I think changes this particular space, the psychedelics and the cannabis space, in a way that other industries have to catch up to us to understand. We're starting with the belief that we're all interconnected, rather than finding it out as monopolies grow and things like that happen. It's truly a beautiful opportunity to participate in an industry where, as much as I think none of us want to live in capitalism, we all kind of do, and we're all working through it. And this can be a way to do it in a way that aligns with our values.
It is. And I think it's amazing, Okay. I have a few more questions for you. So if you had to encourage someone who was in a similar situation that you've been in, and they're walking your path, what would you tell them?
I would tell them this. Let's say you just became disabled today. Even this is temporary. Today is temporary. Everything you're ever going to go through in your life is temporary. It's not going to feel like this all the time. So start from the perspective that it's not always going to be like this. And the fact that it's not always going to be like this doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get better and you're going to have this miraculously cured body. But it's not always going to feel the same. It's not always going to feel as hard. It's not always going to feel as overwhelming. It's going to get better and worse, and that's incredibly fluid. But the single best argument against giving up is that everything can change in an instant, and you never know when that instant will be. The next thing I would say is be really honest with people about what it's bothering you to hear right now. It really, really bothered me to hear, especially in the beginning, that, oh my God, your life is so hard. I don't know how you do it. I could never do what you're doing. I have to, right? In this body that's been in this accident, that is living in pain, I don't have a choice. And you would do exactly the same if you were in my situation. You would get through it too, whatever that looked like for you. And so for a long time, I didn't tell people that this was bothering me, and I just kind of took it on without ever talking about it.
Yeah.
But, tactfully and kindly telling people that something isn't helping you and that this is hurting your feelings or it's making things harder can be a way to open up discussion about what you actually need and can be essential to getting you the support that you deserve. The next thing I would tell you is not to make getting quote unquote better your goal, but instead to make accommodating yourself and taking care of your body your goal. Taking care of your body might look like going to physical therapy, might look like accessing psychedelic medicine or cannabis medicine. It might look like taking a rest day. But if the goal is getting quote unquote better, it's too easy to feel like you're failing
Right.
because your body is doing something natural. And instead connecting to those rhythms and saying, I'm going to accommodate myself and this is what I need today. And I need to push myself when I need to push myself, and I need to rest when I need to rest. And not being afraid to accommodate yourself is essential to improving your life after something like this happens to you. We live in a society that's so production focused and will tell you to be disciplined, and that because you're disciplined, you're going to achieve goals. It's not how disability works. When something like this happens to you and your body is changed for the duration of your lifetime, you have to learn to stand against that call that tells you to push yourself too hard and tells you not to accommodate yourself, and truly give your body what it needs, not to feel indulgent, not to feel like you're lazy, but because this is how you heal. The very last thing I would say is not to be afraid of anger. Anger is very, very scary, especially I think for women. I think we're told that to be angry is to be threatening or somehow mean to other people in society. But anger is proof that your spirit, your body, and your mind love you and are deeply saddened by the fact that you have been subjected to something that's unfair. It is unfair when something like this happens, and you have every right to be mad. And allowing that anger to express itself in a healthy way, whatever that is. For me, it was journaling. I just wrote pages and pages of like, I am mad about my life right now. Whatever that expression is, it has to express itself. Because if you weren't mad, that would be deeply devastating. You love yourself. You care about yourself. That's why you're pissed something bad happened to you. And acknowledging that and celebrating it in a healthy way is essential to moving forward in emotionally processing your new disability.
Did y'all hear that? I mean, man, you know, I think when talking to you, it allows for people to see the power of being fragile, right? And a lot of times people might look at a person and says, oh, this person's like, from the physical perspective, they're disabled. But it's really allowing people to see like, you know, hey, you should love yourself. You should be gentle and kind to yourself. You should be merciful to yourself. And we're naturally, some people are just not wired that way. Some people are just like, oh no, I gotta be hard. I gotta run. I gotta like, you know, who cares how much pain I'm in? I gotta push myself.
I was like that.
Yeah. And the thing is like, I always tell people like when things happen, it's going to allow for you to be in a space where you can appreciate you, like, and love you, you know, because our body is fragile, but truthfully, the most fragile part of us is our spirit, our soul, right? Because it's absorbing all of that, you know, that energy, right? Whether it's positive, negative, it's just taking it all in. And so, and it's like, this is not who we are. This is not who we are. We are supposed to be one, and yet we are becoming divided within ourselves. And so, listening to you, it allowed for me to see that, you know, that perspective on the beauty of that, because you know, being yourself. A lot of times people say, "Oh, I have to like prove things to people." But then you start, as you get older or you go through more things in life, you start realizing that you just have to just be. And it gets scary. It's like, well, what do I do with just being? I'm just sitting in the middle of the ocean and I'm just supposed to stay here. It's like, well, if you really think about it, everything's always constantly moving around you. And it's coming to you, it's drawing towards you. You know, naturally when we try to control things, we don't realize it, but we push things away. because
We
we're
really
trying to
do.
control it, you know? So, yeah, that was powerful. Yeah. So, last question. How can people find you if they're like, hey, can you save me and help me?
Absolutely. So I work for a firm called Rudic Law Group. I'm sure if we have links, we'll link that in the show notes. But it's RUDICK lawgroup.com. You will see on our website that we have a really easy link that you can use to get in touch with us. I'm also on LinkedIn. I am the only Victoria Cvitanovic I can find on LinkedIn, so I will probably be the only one that you can find as well. I'm also on Instagram at Victoria_instas. We do a lot of commercial transactional work, a lot of the healthcare stuff, the cybersecurity stuff, IP, that kind of law. We also offer a really unique model that I think a lot of people in this business are interested in, and that is what we call fractional general counsel. A lot of businesses in this space, especially on the cannabis and psychedelic side, are in startup mode. They're a person or group of people who have a passion that are bringing this together, and that's super beautiful. But what tends to happen is at some point in the growth of the business, you have enough issues and you have enough questions that you really do need a lawyer on staff, but there's no way for that to work in the budget. And so what we do instead is allow you to pay as part of a monthly plan. And we take a couple of clients on each level of monthly plan. So together, you're paying that salary of that person who would be on staff. And we're there to answer your questions whenever they come up. We stay on top of what's going on in your business and in your area and in your space in the industry. So you don't have to pay for catch-up costs. And you can call us and you don't have to worry about a ticking clock or a billable hour. You already know what the invoice is going to be. And we are there to find that answer to that question for you and get you whatever it is that you need to solve your problem. A lot of people really like this model, but we do have the individual work stuff available if you have something specific that you need immediately and you're not ready to commit to a month. I'll also point out that we offer social equity rates to support those who are in this industry that are helping others. And we try to make it so the legal bill is never the reason that you don't have the support that you need.
Okay, so can we agree that this was a cool interview?
I really appreciate you saying that. I listen to your podcast and you interview so many cool people, and lawyers are not cool. Ultimately,
I mean, yeah, you're like different. You got like tattoos and stuff, and
I
you're
do
like
have tattoos and
cool.
stuff.
Like,
But
you know, you
nobody
know,
wants to
it's
talk
like
to their lawyer.
a lawyer who shows up on a motorcycle with a little helmet on and everything, and they're just like, "Hey, what's up? I'm your lawyer," and you're just like, "Oh my gosh, he's so cool."
I really appreciate you saying that. I really appreciate you saying that. We work really hard to make sure that people in this industry feel truly supported. That is always the goal. And I hope that Rudic Law Group can be supported to you or to members of your community who need us.
Victoria, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being you. Thank you for overcoming all the things in your life to be in this moment. You know, because you're a very, very strong person. And also a very caring and loving person. So I think thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for building this community. You should be really proud of it.
Yeah, man, it's beautiful when you hear people's story. It's a warm-hearted thing. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoy this one, and I will see you on the next episode. Peace.